Hey,
Joe,
thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure and honor.
And on the day where Bill Cosby goes to the pokey. Crazy.
Sad story, that.
Sad for some people, happy for others, sad that he's only going away for... I wonder if that's a death sentence for a man at his age. Essentially it is, right? He's like 81 or something like that.
It would be weird if justice took into account like your health status in awarding sentences.
Right. I think they have done that, though. Didn't they do that with that guy who was Speaker Hastert, who was Speaker of the House, who was convicted for molesting a large number of boys when he was a wrestling coach?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that, man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
15 months.
15 months. Imagine. I mean, that's pure insanity.
He's in a wheelchair when he was going.
Yeah.
It could have been.
Well, there's no way if he was a 25-year-old able-bodied man who had done the exact same thing, he would have gone to jail for 15 months for admitting to molest a large number of kids who were under his care when he was a wrestling coach, right?
I think so. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he was the guy the movie was made of. No, that was a different guy.
No, that was DuPont.
Okay.
DuPont was not a child molester. He was just a psychopath who hired wrestlers to come live with him and wrestle with him.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know one of them. The main guy, the movie. The two brothers, Dave and Mark Schultz, fantastic wrestlers who were completely misrepresented in the movie. They made him out to be like involved in this weird gay relationship with him and doing cocaine and all. They added all sorts of shit to that movie. Very weird how they do that.
Screenwriters, you got to dramatize it.
I guess.
His sentence wasn't for child abuse.
What?
That's why it wasn't that. It says the judge said it would have been higher. He would have gotten more if the statutes didn't run out. The limitation for accidents in the 1960s and 70s ran out, so the judge noted the punishment for such a conviction would have been far worse. I think he actually got convicted for bank transactions, keeping stuff secret.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and had to pay fines.
Statutes of limitations.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Bill Cosby, that psychology professors and experts were obviously stating that he had some sort of problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because the media will have a certain narrative they want to promote, and they'll sort of find the psychologists who will say the thing that fits that.
Yeah.
Right? So I think most clinical psychologists would say, I've never talked to the guy. I'm not going to try to diagnose him from a distance.
Right.
I have no idea what his condition is or what his issue is. But then there's the handful who are willing to kind of stick their necks out and say something. And man, it's embarrassing to be a psych professor for that reason, because you're always kind of being represented publicly by the people who are kind of being least professional about those kind of diagnoses.
That is a real problem today, isn't it? Like in terms of identity politics and this inclination to draw conclusions and to lean towards one side or the other instead of just looking at the actual situation objectively. Yeah. And if you're not talking to him, I mean, I'm assuming Bill Cosby is a terrible piece of shit as a human being. That's what I'm assuming by looking at all this, but I've never talked to the man. I don't know what kind of crazy shit he's got going on in his head, but if all these women are telling the truth, and it seems super unlikely that they're all lying.
Yeah.
I mean, was there there's over 50 of them, right? With the same story? Yeah.
Well, he's got a deep, dark streak, that's for sure. I mean, the weird thing is, though, a lot of people who are successful have a little bit of that dark streak. They have a little bit of that sociopathy. Like, they can kind of step back from normal human relations, and they can either turn it into, abuse and exploitation like Cosby did, or they can kind of civilize themselves, right? And they can harness that to do something that's good and where they're kind of using their ability to take a different viewpoint on things.
Yeah.
To analyze human behavior or invent things or propose new policies or whatever. And so I think that kind of dark streak, if you have it, you have to recognize it and kind of tame it and work with it. And the people who do, I think, can often do great things for society. And the people who don't end up in jail.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up to you as an evolutionary psych professor. looking at the human mind and looking at behavior patterns and what's clearly some sort of, I hesitate to call crime an addiction, but it seems like an addictive pattern that he has, that there's a compulsion to doing this to people. That's not as simple as he wants women to have sex with him. They don't want to have sex with him, so he drugs them. I don't think it's that simple. I think there's some getting away with it thing. There's got to be some he's better than everyone thing because he's royalty in terms of like Hollywood, in terms of show business, in terms of stand-up comedy. He's always been treated as royalty. I mean, he's been allowed to essentially criticize anyone he wants. It's rarely is there a rebuttal to the things that he says. And, he's been criticizing the black community for its use of bad words and for its use of sexually explicit language and depictions. And meanwhile, the entire time he's raping people. I mean, it's fucking amazing.
I think one thing that might happen is if you've got this public image as being like squeaky clean family values, and you've got the burden of kind of being a moral exemplar like that, just like televangelists, right? Or anybody who has a big religious following, like the pressure to be good all the time, I think can kind of tip people into this.
Right.
The thrill of transgression, I imagine, could be quite kind of addictive. And I think that's a real danger. And I think that kind of hypocrisy is why we should be really careful about kind of idolizing anybody to that degree, kind of morally, and putting that burden on them.
Yeah, I mean, I could only imagine like being an evangelist and being someone who preached about the word of God, but meanwhile having this weird hooker thing. Like, do you remember, what was his name? Ted. He ran a giant church in, I believe it was Colorado. And the entire time, I used to have a bit about him, the entire time he was smoking meth and having sex with gay prostitutes. And all the while he was going on about, it's always the guys who go on about how awful gay people are that are secretly gay. It's so common.
There's a little research on that. I mean, it's not definitive, but it looks like a lot of...
Ted Haggerty?
Like,
boom. Haggard?
Yeah.
Haggard.
There's a lot of people, a lot of guys who are pretty, like, outspokenly homophobic. And then, like, you put them in a sex research situation and see what actually rouses them. Like, if you show them straight or gay porn, right, and you have a plethysmograph and you sense what
the graph? What is it?
Plethysmograph.
What is that?
It senses blood flow in the penis.
Oh, boy. I need one of those. Just have it in the background of every podcast. When you come to do the podcast, you got to put these electrodes on your penis. And then we were just going to talk about Japanese vomit porn and tentacles.
Well, the plethysmographs don't lie.
Plethysmographs don't lie. Not the heart. The heart lies. Not those plethysmographs.
So yeah, the people who are often most hostile to something have some little issue inside that is creating some conflict. Yeah,
I mean, it only makes sense. The conflicted thoughts of the human being who has this ideal of who they'd like to project and what they'd like people to think they are, who meanwhile has this thing below the surface that is literally everything they despise and everything they rally against, and that is their true nature.
Yeah.
God, it's got to be the awfulest feeling. I mean, I've known several guys who are closeted gay men, and it's awful existence. They just live in this perpetual state of just angst and unease, and meanwhile, God, I just think for the most part, especially if you live in an urban environment, most part people don't give a shit anymore. Yeah. It's almost a self-imposed prison, and the people that do give a shit, they're the real problem. The people who are not gay, who really care if someone's gay, unless they're trying to do a Cosby on you, like, why do you care?
Yeah, look, if somebody wants to be in the closet about their sexuality, like they want to be discreet for professional reasons or because investors would panic or whatever, like that's totally cool. But I think it is so hard to be authentic to yourself. Like, it's okay to sort of acknowledge I have this sexuality or these predilections, and it's up to me to kind of harness them and deal with them and manage them. And if you want to do that privately, that's cool. We should have that freedom.
Yes.
But if you don't work out those little demons, and if you can't acknowledge what's authentic, I think that's where you get these problems like the Cosby case.
Yeah, and I believe there's a difference between discretion, not wanting to discuss your sexuality, and out-and-out hypocrisy.
Yeah.
These are completely different things. It's one thing, like you said, like say if a guy's a CEO of some major corporation and he happens to be gay and he's just not interested in all the political nonsense and all the social nonsense that goes along with discussing that.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just going to keep it discreet. That makes sense. Like, why should he have to? But if he lies to his friends, you know, like,
Or if he goes
yeah.
on the attack in media,
Yes.
like that is
Yes.
that is simple.
Damnation, hellfire.
Yeah.
We are so strange.